Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Dominic Isla, the marketing manager here at Kershaw, and today I'm excited to be joined by Taylor Robert. Welcome, Taylor, and thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. I'm stoked to be here. Always glad to be a part of the Kershaw family. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Taylor, I grew up riding dirt bikes. Obviously, as you can see in the background there, you're a professional rider. I started on a Kawasaki KE 100 many years ago and ended up graduating to the Kawasaki KX 250. But I mean, it's clear that you've taken this skill and passion to a level most people, especially myself, couldn't dream of. You've been an X Game gold medalist, international 6-day enduro champion. It's probably an understatement to say that you're a master of two wheels, right?
Yeah, I would like to think of myself as pretty close to a master. I mean, the cool thing about two wheels and especially dirt bikes is there's so many variables that go into it that you can really always be improving. I mean, there's just really no limit to how good you can be on a dirt bike. But like you said, I've won a few things in my day, and I'm always trying to improve and just make myself better.
And that's why you've achieved what you have, I'm sure. Hey, I know when we were first introduced to each other by Ari at Revzilla, he mentioned you had been a fan of Kershaw for years, even before we met. Would you say that your love of knives or your love of dirt bikes came first?
Well, pretty close, honestly. I mean, dirt bikes were definitely pretty early on in my life. I think my dad bought me my first dirt bike when I was 3 years old. I started riding it when I was 4 years old. So I wasn't quite playing with knives at that age, but it was pretty soon after that. You know, I found one of my dad's really old pocket knives, just stuffed away in I think his dresser or something, and I think I snuck it away for a little while until he found out, and I got in a little bit of trouble for that. But after that, you know, he was a great dad, and taught me the safety first aspect of it. And then soon after that, bought me my first little Swiss Army pocket knife. So that was always really cool. And then, as I got older and just always had appreciation for knives and just gadgets in general, I was introduced to Kershaw in my teens and just, fell in love with the products and just the quality and the engineering and everything about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You never forget that first knife. I can remember mine too. I don't remember the brand, but I remember it was a small lockback folder, blue plastic handle. And of course, as a young kid, being a young kid, I cut myself within the first 5 minutes, but I've learned a lesson since then. So,
Oh yeah.
and I have a guess, but I'd like to hear what's your favorite Kershaw? What do you carry the most?
Lately I've been on this kick with the Blur. It just seems to be super functional for me. I've got it right here on me. Couple things I like about it. It has the textured side, so you get a little extra grip. The assisted opening, which I'm a huge fan of. It is one of the USA knives, which I always love representing Team USA. And you guys did a little special edition for me, so I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but it has Team USA engraved on it for our international ISTE adventure this year. But what I really like about this one is it has the dual blade with the serrations, but it doesn't have the sharp serrations. These are kind of the rounded serrations. And what I notice myself doing a lot is, just out riding, trail riding, exploring. You'll come across twine or rope or whatever it is, and it gets caught up in the rear wheel or something like that. And that kind of rounded serration is really good for just cutting that stuff out of the rear wheel. Before that, I was using the Link, which has the sharp serrations, but it gets caught up on that rope easily. Good for other applications, but it's just as far as cutting rope and twine and stuff like that. This has kind of been my go-to.
Right on. I was gonna guess the Link because we've done a few variations of that for Team USA, but it's cool you got the Blur from this year. That's awesome. You're fairly active in dirt biking, obviously, and you're an ambassador to Kershaw, and I feel like we're very active in the community as well. And sometimes I see fans ask what dirt bikes and knives have to do with each other, and why a knife company would sponsor a rider or different motorcycle outlets. How would you respond to that?
I mean, I don't think you necessarily, being a knife company, that's what's cool about it, is you can apply your guys' product to really any industry, any just person walking down the street. It's such a useful tool to carry on you at all times. For me, like I was just explaining, I like carrying it with me when I'm riding as well. being that I'm riding, going off-road, adventuring, stuff like that, I get myself into some sticky situations here and there. So I'm not in a controlled environment like you see, a motocross or a supercross guy. And like I was saying, I have to, cut some rope or twine out of my wheel every now and then. Sometimes I carry the hatchet or the Taskmaster saw with me to cut some trees down, cut some trail in. Even some of the multi-tools that you guys make, I think it's the shuffle DIY, I'll carry with me if I'm just going to try and tune my suspension real quick. It's got the little flathead screwdriver on there. So honestly, it's the perfect ambassadorship for me, because I'm passionate about knives and I carry them with me every day anyway. And then, like I said, I get to use them when I'm out in the field at my job, if you will. So it's a pretty awesome relationship to have.
Yeah, you made a bunch of great points, and I solidly believe, no matter what your hobby, no matter your passion, your lifestyle, carrying a knife every day just makes life more convenient, right?
It does.
And obviously you have some great points and experiences in that. So getting back to motorcycles and dirt bike racing, things like that. What's the difference between what you do professionally, enduro, versus say motocross or supercross, which is, I think, as a kid, that was my real first introduction into motorcycle racing, was one of those outlets.
Exactly. And myself as well. I was introduced to motocross early on. I mean, I learned how to ride a dirt bike just, in the backyard or in a dirt field, probably like a lot of people. But, my dad didn't really know that much about enduro riding, and we just went to the local motocross track. And that's kind of where my career began, if you will. We just grew up going to the local moto races. We always kind of rode in the desert for fun, but I never really thought of it as a career path. And then, when I was 15, 16 years old, there was kind of this mix hybrid series, if you will. They do like a little bit of motocross and a little bit of enduro, and they put them together on the same track. And I started racing that and just found out that I was really good at it, because I had always grown up riding in the desert and just exploring. And I've always had that kind of adventurous side to me. So it was kind of like a natural fit. And just after, really just 1 year of doing that hybrid series, I had more support doing that than I ever did racing motocross. Because motocross is honestly, it's a pretty cutthroat business. There's a very small percentage of guys that make it, and there's a lot of guys chasing that dream. So I made this little transition into the off-road enduro world. And honestly, it turned out to be a great career choice for myself, because it wasn't a couple years later than that I was actually getting paid to ride my dirt bike. And I was like, oh, what? No way. This is something I can actually, make money doing. So, and then I just kept taking it to, the next level every year. I tried getting a little bit better, got on better teams, better equipment, and just was able to, really to take it to the top level in my sport. So really the biggest difference is it just comes down to controlled environment versus not controlled environment. Those guys are racing in stadiums on closed courses. We race on open desert courses or in the forest, wherever the track might be. You don't necessarily get to practice a lot. You're just kind of racing the terrain as it comes at you. So you have to be really good at reading terrain, which is an aspect that I like, because it's not necessarily about who can hold it wide open the longest. You have to be pretty smart and precise with your decisions while you're out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never really thought of it quite like that. Do you remember that very first race as a kid?
I do. It's pretty funny. I actually, the track that I raced at is still the closest track to my house now. And I remember going out there for my first race. I was so young. I don't even know if I was nervous, because I don't know if I was able to comprehend that. But the thing I remember most about it is, and I was in the smallest and slowest class. So they have the 50cc class, and then I was in the 50cc beginner class, which is meant for, first timers or guys just getting started. And anyway, the kid who won the race had passed me on the last lap. So I finished right behind him. I was a lap down. But I remember crossing the line and thinking that I got second, because the leader had finished right in front of me. I didn't even know how to comprehend the fact that I got lapped at that point. And I came across the finish line, and my parents were there. I was like, I got second. And my dad was like, yeah, good job. You didn't get second, but good job anyway. So it was pretty funny. I still remember that to this day, but it is kind of crazy how you always remember those first experiences pretty well.
Sure. That's still a cool moment, no matter what.
Yeah.
I think with youthfulness comes a little bit of fearfulness, right? But I think I still would have been a little nervous in that scenario. And how does that compare, that feeling that you had the first time on the starting line as a kid versus, what you do today? Are you nervous at all? What's going through your head when you're on the line, on the starting grid?
As I try to stay as calm as possible when I'm on the starting line now. Obviously, I have 27 years of experience under my belt, so I know what I'm getting myself into. But in some scenarios, that can actually make you more nervous because you know exactly what's you're getting yourself into. You know the all the possible outcomes at this point, right? Whereas the first time you go out there, you really don't know what to expect. But now it's like, oh man, there's a lot of different ways this could play out. So you're always obviously hoping for the best case scenario, but motorcycle racing, that's not always the way it goes. So it's I'm still definitely nervous sometimes when I get out there. It just kind of depends on how much is on the line, really.
Speaking of things being on the line, I know the X Games have been extremely popular over the years, especially with our generation. I know when it really took off in the 90s and early 2000s, I watched every year. What was it like competing at the X Games? Was that one of those moments where you're like, this is everything, I'm so nervous right now? Or was your mind just clear?
The X Games was surreal. I mean, it was such an awesome experience. Racing off-road enduro style racing, you're kind of more, you know, bare bones crew. It's not all glamorous, and we don't have as much of the media attention that say the supercross guys go to. So that was the biggest event I had ever done up to that point, and just how well they took care of the athletes and just the whole the magnitude of it was pretty cool. So it was definitely a surreal feeling. And then being up, the first time we did it was in the Staples Center in LA. So we're literally lined up in the Staples Center, and they had to start elevated up into the stands. So we're like level with all the fans. You can look left or right; they're just basically eye level with you. So it was crazy. I mean, it was a surreal experience, and I mean, it's so grateful that I was able to have that a part of my career, because our X Games was always uh, evolving and taking in new sports, adding new sports, getting rid of sports. So I was able to do it for a few years. I think we had it from 11 to 15. So got to do it a handful of times. And like I said, I was able to win a gold and silver medal doing it. So definitely a cool point in my career, and just happy that I was able to be a part of it. And, nobody will ever be able to take that away from me. So definitely grateful for that.
Right on. Yeah, that had to be just such an incredible experience. What was the moment when you realized that you were turning a passion into a career? Was there a specific moment that you can identify that like really kind of that switch turned on and you were like, holy cow, I'm this is my career now?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, it was always a dream, right? That I wanted to be a professional motocross, supercross racer. And then, like I was telling you before, I made that transition into the off-road enduro world. Um, but it really wasn't until, I started racing the off-road scene when I was 15. And then I turned pro when I was 18. And it was kind of really at that first race that it was kind of that light switch went off, because I was obviously working really hard to become a professional athlete and be able to make a living at it. But then I went out there in my first race and I was able to get on the podium in my very first try, which was pretty rare. There's only a few kids that have ever done that in my discipline. So I went out there, I got on the podium, and then I was like, all right, I got this. I know I can make a job out of this. If I can do that in the first try, there's definitely more. I have more in the tank.
That had to be, almost unbelievable is kind of what I would describe that as. If I were in those shoes, I'd feel like this is so unbelievable that I'm here and that this is going to be what I'm going to be doing. It's so awesome. But speaking of feelings, maybe more on a painful side, since I've known you, I know you've had a couple pretty serious injuries. Obviously, with any sport, especially racing, there is a risk associated with it. You care to share some of the different major injuries you've had over the years and what that's felt like?
Yeah, I've had some bad ones, which is kind of unfortunate because I actually have a really smooth riding style. So I've had a couple scenarios where just really just bad luck. I mean, being that there are so many variables in dirt bike racing, you can't control everything. But one really bad one I had in 2017, me and my teammate were actually going head to head, and just kind of drag racing down this desert straightaway, and I hit a hidden rock, didn't see it, and just end over end at like 60 miles an hour. And I actually would have been fine if I would have just hit the ground how I did. But then my bike came over and smashed me into the ground and ended up lacerating liver, kidney, intestines, 2 broken vertebrae, a couple broken ribs. So that one was super painful. Definitely don't ever want to live that one over again. But other than that, then I got all healed up, came back, started winning races again. And then the very next year, I was out riding at my local track, and some kid got on the track going the wrong way and hit me head on. And I broke both my arms at the same time. So that is actually one that wasn't super painful, but it tested my relationship with my wife when you have 2 broken arms and you can't do some of the daily necessities as far as like going to the restroom that you would normally do by yourself. So that was an interesting one for sure, but got through it, still married, and found out that my wife really loves me.
Yeah, what a test of a marriage right there.
Yep.
That sounds like a great wife.
Yeah.
What was the recovery time like on you know, that serious one where you said you lacerated your liver and vertebrae were broken, things like that? How long did it take you to recover and get back to full speed again?
It actually recovered quicker than you would think. The hospital stay was long. I was in the hospital for about 11 days. I was in ICU for, I think, 3 days. But the whole hospital stay was pretty treacherous. I mean, I just being in and out of hospitals a lot with different injuries over the years, I've learned to have a little bit of a hatred for hospitals. So didn't have a greatest experience in there. But once I got out of the hospital, I started healing pretty well. And being that they were mostly organ and tissue damage, organ and tissue heals a lot faster than bones, given I still had the fractures in my back. But I think I was actually back racing after that one in like 8 weeks, maybe 9
Wow,
weeks. So yeah,
that's
I was
incredible.
trying to chase. I was trying to chase a championship. I mean, we do championships every year, so I was kind of still in the running at that point. I had only missed 2 rounds, so in theory, if I went out there and I won the rest of the races that year, I was still going to be able to possibly win the championship if some of the other guys had bad luck. But unfortunately, that's not how it worked out that year. I still went out and won a bunch of races, but just missed one too many races to win the championship.
Right on. That's incredible that you were able to get back on the bike so quickly. I mean, that just tells the body's resilience right there, and especially, you know, probably the level of fitness you have certainly didn't hurt the recovery there. So what was it like mentally though after that big of a crash and injury, getting back on the bike the first time and being able to, you know, make sure you were still pushing all the way to your limit? Was that difficult, or was that not even in your mind?
It was difficult. And honestly, like I was saying, I was trying to chase a championship. So I probably came back sooner than I realistically should have. I wasn't in the physical fitness state that I should have been in. Just, I mean, being in the hospital for 11 days alone, you don't realize how much you lose when you're literally laying in a bed for 11 days straight. And I tried to regain that, but it takes a while to regain that muscle and cardiovascular fitness as well. So that my first race back was actually one of the toughest races I've ever had. I just, as far as coming from a struggling standpoint, I just didn't feel like myself out there. Couldn't put the bike where I wanted to. And to top it all off, the race that I came back at was in the exact same location as where I crashed. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind the whole time that, I was in the same area. I literally, before the race started, I went over and looked at the rock that I hit. So it was a little bit of a mental game there, but I toughed it out. I still managed a top 5 finish, I think, but wasn't where I wanted to be. And like I said, I just wasn't in the shape I should have been in, but hey, I got out there and did it, and got over that mental hump. And then I think I won the very next race.
I mean, that's totally understandable after an injury like that. And what they say the hardest part is getting back on the horse after something like that, and you were able to do that. And obviously, you've continued on, so that's great. On a
Yeah.
lighter note, obviously you're not in motocross or supercross. You started there as a kid in that kind of venue, but do you ever get to do tricks in enduro and what you do now? And if so, do you have a favorite one?
Yeah. So, kind of coming from the enduro side is a little bit more technical, aspect than motocross or supercross. So kind of some of the tricks that we do, I would say they're more kind of like skateboard style tricks, right? Like they're super technical. They might not be as like doing big flips and spins and stuff like that, but little technical, like, riding the front wheel over a hump and setting the rear tire exactly where you want, and just having that control to put the bike exactly where you want is always really fun. I always get a kick out of that, being able to be as precise as you can, doing a wheelie and then setting your front tire right on a rock, right where you want it to land, is always pretty fun to me. But with that being said, I have done a couple backflips in my career, and those are kind of cool to do. I didn't do the big ones, off the 75-foot ramp that you see the freestyle guys doing. I did what they call mini flips. You just build like a little mini kicker and do a quick backflip. Those are pretty cool. I enjoyed that. So don't really have a good setup to do it all the time, but it's one of those things that I think if I practice it all the time, it'd be cool to do on demand. You see a little kicker off the side of the road or something, you stop and go hit it real quick. It'd be fun to do that.
That's sweet. So is it fair to say that, with the type of things that you're doing in enduro, you say are more technically, there's more finesse in the actual trick than doing something big and explosive like a backflip?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's how if you ever watch a skateboarder try a trick, he might try it 100 times and land it one time, and that's the victory. So some of the things that I'll do on the dirt bike are similar to that, where it's like I'm trying to do, come in with a lot of speed, ride the front wheel, it might be spin the bike around and then kind of ride the bike backwards, or fakie as they call it, and then flick the front wheel around. So something like that would be really technical with a 250-pound bike. And it might take me 50, 100 tries, but sometimes I like just doing it, till I get that satisfaction of being able to complete what I pictured in my mind.
Right on. That makes sense. So what's 2022 look for you? What are you excited about that's coming up, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so I'm doing 2 different series this year, doing the National Hare and Hound series, which is pure desert racing. I haven't done that series for a couple of years, so I'm super excited to get back to that. And then there's this other series on the West Coast called the Western Hare Scrambles. It's kind of like a true to your roots, like real off-road series. And I've never actually done the full Western Hare Scrambles series. I've always had other races that conflict with it. So I'm excited to go out there and do that series this year. They have a lot of really cool venues. I'm actually going to be up in your guys' neck of the woods a couple times this year. They got a couple races in Oregon and Washington and Idaho. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Awesome. That sounds fun. It's hard to think that there could be accomplishments or goals that you're still chasing, considering the titles that you already have. But what would make you look back, say 5-10 years from now on your career and say, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I accomplished that. I mean, and maybe you have already done that, but maybe share with the audience what that is.
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple goals for this year. That National Hare and Hound Championship, that's a championship that I've chased a couple times before, but due to those 2 injuries that I explained earlier, I actually got taken out of that championship both times I tried it. So that's kind of like that one last thing I kind of want to check off, go win that championship. And then ISD is a big one for me too. You guys have supported me in that for a few years now, and I've been fortunate enough to win it as myself, an individual, win it with the team twice. So I really want to go back and get that hat trick. Like 3 world trophies would be pretty darn cool.
That would be some accomplishment for sure. I can't even imagine. You just have a career that I think a lot of kids out there have dreamed about, and it's so awesome not only being able to talk to you but hear about these stories. But let's get back to knives for a minute if we can. And I'm sure some of the viewers today that don't necessarily carry a pocket knife every day, maybe they have a knife or 2, but they don't necessarily carry it every day, or maybe they're new to knives and a little bit hesitant to carry one every day. What would you say is the top reason that anybody that's watching right now that doesn't carry a knife every day but should?
I mean, there's so many reasons, but some of my favorite ones, I mean, there is always a little bit of self-defense to it, right? Like, I mean, there could be so many situations where you have that to protect yourself. And I think that is huge. And it's such a simple tool to have on you for that. But I mean, then it just comes down to even the other simple daily features, right? Like Amazon is so big these days, right? And everybody gets Amazon packages, probably, at least weekly, maybe monthly, maybe daily. And it's so easy just to whip that thing out, open up your box, open up your package, something like that. And I'll even use it daily just for cutting up food. Like I like avocados and apples, and sometimes we'll just whip that thing out, cut open my avocado, pop the seed with a knife, pull the seed out, and then, I have part of my lunch right there. So like I said, there's so many reasons why I use a knife. And I think, really anybody can find a good use for it no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of avocados as well. All of those are great points. All right, one last question. I know you mentioned Speed Safe earlier, so maybe you've already given that away, but push button automatics, Speed Safe assisted opening, or manual opening, which is your favorite?
I really like the Speed Safe, just the simplicity of it. And it's easy to use, but there's just something about the automatic knife too it's pretty fun. It's definitely a little bit faster than the Speed Safe. But it's just that feeling you get when you hit that button and it just whips out there, and it whips out there with some authority. It's pretty cool. So I always go back and forth between those knives. I grew up with just a straight up, just manual thumb flick knife. And I would just sit there when I was driving or bored, just practicing flicking that thing. So I think that, kind of like a manual transmission, right? I think all kids should learn how to drive on a manual transmission. You should probably learn with just your regular manual opening and then graduate to a Speed Safe or a automatic from there.
Yeah, I get that. I think I'm in a similar boat as you. There's something about the automatic. You push that button and it just comes out with such authority, and it's just a powerful feeling to have in your hand, even if you're only going to cut open an avocado or an Amazon box, like you were saying. It's just such a cool feeling, but at the same time, there's that fidget factor, as we like to call it, in-house with the manual opening knives. You could, like you said, if you're bored or you're playing a video game, you're waiting for the load screen, or you're driving, you can pull it out and just open, close, open, close, open, close, kind of like a fidget spinner, basically. It's, some guys will say
Exactly.
that, it's the original fidget spinner or something like that. So I get it.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd say my personal favorite is probably automatics as well. So
Yeah.
but Taylor, it's been great talking to you today. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing, these memories and moments with us. And viewers, don't leave just yet. Taylor's going to jump down in the chat box here in a few minutes and answer some of your questions. And so I hope you guys and ladies bring some good questions for him other than what we've talked about today. But Taylor, again, it's been great having you, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. Always glad to be a part of the family.
And best of luck this coming year.
All right, thank you.